Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew, and today we are going to be talking about how you can prevent heart disease. Before we begin, I'm just going to share with you our general disclaimer. This information is being provided in order to increase your awareness. It is not intended to be used as medical advice. If you believe that you have any medical conditions or have specific questions regarding your health, please speak with your physician. So, a content overview of what we are going to be discussing today. That's going to include heart disease, what it is, the different types of heart disease, risks and how you can control them, coronary artery disease, as well as different types of prevention. So, jumping right in, what is heart disease? Heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States, whereas 1 in every 4 deaths is a direct result of heart disease. So heart disease is a cluster or a range of conditions that affect your heart. So there are many different forms, and we're going to discuss those throughout the presentation. And the big thing here is that they can be prevented with healthy lifestyle changes. Heart disease is largely preventable, and that is a good thing. So if you are on the cusp of developing heart disease or you have any risk factors, they are very, very controllable. There's a lot that is in your power that you can do to prevent the progression. So some different types of heart disease. So again, heart disease encompasses that wide range of different heart problems. But this list here, this includes blood vessel diseases such as coronary artery disease. We're going to discuss coronary artery disease a lot throughout this presentation towards the latter half. Heart rhythm problems, specifically arrhythmias, heart defects. So these are the things that you were born with, that congenital heart defects, hardening of the arteries, which is atherosclerosis, and then hardening and weakening of the heart muscles, which is cardiomyopathy. And like any other tissue in our body, our heart is susceptible to infections. These could be caused by bacteria, viruses, parasites, you name it. On this list here, coronary artery disease is by far the most common type of heart disease in the United States. It affects the blood flow to our heart and could lead to a heart attack. So it's important to know your risks. So risk factors are conditions that increase your risk of developing a condition, in this case, heart disease. It's important to know that some risk factors are controllable and others aren't. We're going to spend a lot of this presentation discussing controllable risk factors. The big 3 risk factors for heart disease, and it's not all inclusive, these are just the big ones, is high blood pressure, high blood cholesterol, and smoking. We're going to talk about all of these throughout the presentation. And according to the CDC, nearly half of Americans have at least one of these 3 big risk factors for heart disease. And again, what I mentioned before, the good news is that heart disease can be prevented and it can be treated with lifestyle choices and having a healthy lifestyle. So again, that is good news for us. So what is in our control? So we could control everything on the left chart there. So that's our blood pressure, our BMI or our body weight, cholesterol levels, diabetes, diet, physical activity level, whether or not we use tobacco. And then there are things that we cannot control. So this is our age, our family history, and our biological sex. So for that, what we cannot control, so our age, our risk is going to increase as we get older. And we'll talk about some age ranges on the next slide. Family history, for men, did direct blood relative, brother, grandpa, grandma, dad, did any of them have heart disease? Same for women, sister, mother. All of these things greatly increase our risk. For the things that we can control, and we're going to discuss these a lot again. So blood pressure, if we let our blood pressure go uncontrolled and it's very high for a long period of time, this could result in the hardening and the thickening of those arteries. It's going to cause them to narrow. It's going to make it a lot harder for blood to move throughout our body. If we have an excess of weight, our BMI, that's going to increase many conditions, not just heart disease. Our cholesterol levels, high cholesterol can increase the risk of the formation of plaque and plaque buildup in the arteries, and we're going to discuss that in upcoming slides as well. Diabetes, that's going to increase our risk because it damages the insides of our arteries, the walls. Our diet, if we're eating a diet that is rich in fat, salt, sugar, high in cholesterol, these could all contribute to the risk of heart disease. And another big one is that physical inactivity. Again, physical inactivity, it could lead to a lot of different medical conditions and chronic conditions, but it is greatly linked to heart disease as well. And then smoking, we're going to discuss smoking later slides, but the nicotine is going to constrict the blood vessels. It's going to increase your pressure, and that carbon monoxide that we are inhaling is going to damage the arterial walls. Going back to some of those uncontrollable risks, again, age, gender, family history, these are all things that we really can't do much about. However, we can be very aware of these risks, especially family history. So you're going to want to monitor these things, and this is what I was mentioning on the previous slide. So a woman's risk for heart disease increases significantly after menopause around the age of 55 and older, whereas men, it increases around 45 and older. A family history is even more important if the following: for a male, if you have a relative that was under 55 years, such as a brother, father, grandfather that had heart disease, so under 55 for men. And then for female, if you have a direct relative, such as a mother, sister, grandmother that had heart disease before the age of 65. So be very mindful if those apply to you. That increases your risk. Talking about some of those other controllable risks now. So pressure. So blood pressure is just the measure of the force of the blood pushing against the walls of your blood vessels. So pressure, blood pressure, is the result of two different forces. So you have your top number, which is the systolic pressure. That's the pressure that your heart needs to exert when it is beating, whereas your bottom number, or the diastolic that you hear it referred to as, is the pressure in the arteries when the heart is at rest or in between beats. So high blood pressure is a risk for heart disease. It's a pretty big risk. Having that uncontrolled high pressure, it's going to result in that hardening and thickening of the arteries. It's going to narrow those vessels. And it's the silent killer because it's very hard to detect unless you have it routinely measured. About 72 million Americans, and that means 1 in 3 adults have high blood pressure, and they might not even know it. Not treating it is very dangerous. So it's very important to regularly monitor your pressure. Our pressure moves around all the time. So when you're looking at this chart and these ranges on here, think of these as rest. So again, it's very important to get it checked regularly, but you want to make sure that you are resting when you get it checked, so that way you can ensure it's accurate. So when you are resting, we would like to see your systolic, the top number, to be under 120, and then your diastolic, the bottom number, be less than 80. So let's say I took my pressure right now. I've been sitting for 5 to 10, 15 minutes. I'm relaxed. I'm not thinking about too much. I haven't had a lot of caffeine or any stimulants, things like that. And if I get a reading that's under that 120 and 80, that's pretty good. If it's in the elevated range, sometimes that happens. No two people are the same. It's normal for blood pressure to move around day to day, hour to hour. So if it's elevated, okay, that's okay. And then as we see through these ranges, if I am truly resting, I'm not, full of coffee or caffeine. I didn't just get up and run around the block. If I'm seeing my pressure at rest being in that, higher than 180 and higher than 120 for that hypertensive crisis, that's how we know that we should really be monitoring it more often, because that's a critical range right there. Again, normal for it to move around, but very important to check. Another thing worth mentioning is that, let's say I am exercising. Let's say that I am, doing very moderate to vigorous, intense exercise. Let's say I'm running laps. It's It's very normal. And what we'd want to see is that your pressure increases, specifically that top number, that systolic, because our body is creating more of a demand for oxygen. So our heart has to beat more, and our blood pressure increases to push that oxygen rich blood throughout our body. The only time the pressure is an issue when it's high is when we're resting and we don't want it to be high. We're not forcing a demand for that increase. So be very mindful when you're getting it checked that you are truly relaxing. High blood pressure is classified as readings of over 130 and 80, and that's going to be multiple times. If you have one high blood pressure reading, that's just one high reading. But if it's chronic every time you're getting your pressure taken at rest and it's over, that's when you're going to want to chat with your doctor. The primary way that high blood pressure causes harm is by increasing the workload that your heart and your blood vessels have at any period of time. So if it's always increasing that workload, you're making the heart and the vessels work harder and less efficiently. So over time, this high blood pressure is going to lead to complications. Just to name a few: heart failure, having a heart attack, causing kidney failure, and a stroke. For a lot of people, high blood pressure could be controlled with just lifestyle changes. So having a heart healthy diet, which we'll discuss later, having a modest weight reduction, engaging in regular exercise, limiting alcohol intake, whereas some other people may require medications in addition to those lifestyle changes. Again, no two people are the same. No approach is going to be the same for every person. However, usually the first thing that prescribed is those lifestyle changes. Coronary artery disease. This is the most common form of heart disease, as I mentioned before. So this occurs when the arteries that supply blood to our heart muscles become hardened and narrowed over time. This happens because of a buildup in cholesterol, specifically the bad cholesterol, that LDL cholesterol. That's going to build up and form a plaque in the inner walls of your arteries. As this happens, less and less blood is allowed to flow through the arteries, causing the heart muscle to not get the blood or the oxygen that it needs. So again, most common form of heart disease by far. This is the one that leads to that angina or that chest pain and then heart attacks. Over time, this could also weaken heart muscle, contributing to things like heart failure and the potential to develop some heart arrhythmias. This picture, you can see how that damage actually begins. So that coronary artery disease, it begins when there is damage to, or injury to the inner layer, the lumen of the coronary arteries. So there's many things that can cause this damage to occur. The big ones here are smoking, having a high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and a sedentary lifestyle. So how it works is eventually that lumen or the interior wall of that artery is going to become damaged. And over time, as the damage increases, becomes more substantial, something that's referred to as a cobblestone appearance. So imagine a walkway that's just a cobblestone put together. There's all those cracks and those lines in it. So what happens is the smoking, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, things like that, it cracks the arterial walls and it allows that plaque, that bad cholesterol, to form underneath and inside of those walls, and it causes that occlusion there, thus increasing your pressure, increasing your risk for that completely occluding the artery or breaking off and becoming an embolism, just that plaque building up over time. So how do we control it? So this is going to block the blood flow to the heart. It's going to limit the oxygen that we are getting. It's going to lead to that chest pain, heart attacks, and over time, it's going to weaken the heart muscle, leading to the failure and arrhythmias, as I mentioned. High cholesterol itself is a risk factor for having heart disease. It increases the plaque formation, that atherosclerosis, and it leads to the heart attack and stroke. Big thing here, just like with blood pressure, how it's the silent killer, there is often no signs, no symptoms of having a high cholesterol. So it's important to get it checked. That is the main step in controlling your cholesterol, is just getting it checked very often, every few years or as prescribed by your doctor, especially if there is that family risk. Your doctor may want to get it checked even more often. So we keep saying cholesterol. However, there are different types of cholesterol. So the three main ones that we're going to talk about here is our LDL, our HDL, and our triglycerides. Our LDL is referred to as our low density lipoprotein. This is the bad cholesterol. On those previous slides where you saw the buildup and that plaque forming, that's this one right here. The more LDL cholesterol that you have, it increases that risk for heart disease. The HDL, the high density lipoprotein, that is the exact opposite. This is the good or the healthy cholesterol. So to keep these two apart, when you see the H, remember H means the healthy cholesterol. What the HDL does, it picks up the excess of the LDL cholesterol in the arteries, and it's actually going to pull it all the way back to the liver to process it and remove it from the body. So the HDL, think of it like a taxi. It's going to taxi the bad cholesterol out of your body. And then the triglycerides. This is the most common form of fat found in food and our body. It is similar to LDL, where a large amount of it can build up and turn into a plaque. And just remember, triglycerides are just excess calories. This is just body fat. So alcohol and sugar in the body are converted into triglycerides and stored as fat cells. Again, just like the LDL, you want this number to be low. Looking at this chart here for the optimal ranges, you can see for the LDL specifically, the third one there, we want that to be less than 160. However, let's say you have some risk factors. Let's say you've had a previous heart attack, or you've had a stroke, or you are a diabetic, then we want to see it below 100. That is a conversation you'd want to have with your doctor, maybe discuss some medications such as statins. For triglycerides, that excess fat in the bloodstream, we're looking for that number to be under 150. And then for the HDL, this is the good cholesterol. This is the one that we want to be as high as possible. So the higher number that you see here, the better that is. So for men, we'd like to see it above 40. For women, we'd like to see it above 50. The higher the number, the better, though. Again, these are just general recommendations. Your individual recommendations and ranges may vary based on your medical history, things like that, previous cholesterol levels from blood work that maybe you've had. Again, all of this you should always discuss with your doctor. So prevention, we talked about a lot of different things. So to prevent heart disease, these are some of the best things that we can do. Again, not an all-inclusive list, but to prevent specifically things like that coronary artery disease, what we're going to want to do are the big ones here. We're going to want to quit smoking. We're going to want to exercise more. We're going to want to eat that heart-healthy diet, limit alcohol, reduce and manage our stresses when possible, control other health conditions that we have. Maybe we know that we have been diagnosed with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes. We're going to want to make sure that we're taking any medications that have been prescribed to us, and we're going to want to engage in lifestyle changes that are going to control those risk factors, stopping the progression of heart disease. And again, maintaining that healthy body weight. So keep in mind, certain types of heart disease, such as heart defects, cannot be prevented. This is for specifically coronary artery disease. Another thing we could do, again, just to get into more depth, is limit alcohol. This could increase our risk for many different health problems, not just heart disease. So it could increase our blood pressure. It could lead to obesity, stroke. The American Heart Association states that moderation is key. If you don't drink already, there's no reason to start. If you do currently drink, you are going to engage in moderate alcohol consumption. So that means on average 1 to 2 drinks a day for men and 1 drink a day per women. And then you can see the equivalents here. So 1 drink would equal a 12-ounce beer, a 5-ounce glass of wine, or a 1.5 ounce of 80 proof liqueur. Heart healthy diet, mentioned it many times, but what you're going to want to do there is you're going to choose whole grains. You want to eat a lot of fish and lean cuts of meat, such as chicken, poultry. If you are going to have red meats, make sure they are leaner cuts of red meat, trim off the fat, the excess. If you're pan frying things instead of grilling them, making sure that you're draining out the excess fat from the red meats and things like that. We're going to increase our fruits and vegetables, and we're going to limit saturated fats. Saturated fats are found in meats and full fat dairy products. So these are animal products. And we're going to instead want to have the unsaturated fats. So you're going to find these in fish, you're going to find them in olive oil, nuts, seeds, etc. And then again, you're going to go from full fat products to low fat or non-fat dairy products. All of these things together constitutes a heart healthy diet. Exercise. A lack of physical activity is greatly associated with many forms of heart disease, as well as other conditions as well. We want to aim for at least 30 minutes of physical activity most days of the week. Typically about 150 minutes a week is the goal for like a moderate intensity aerobic exercise. So things like walking, jogging, running, biking or cycling, if we're using the elliptical, stair climb, or any of those types of cardiovascular exercise modalities. Regular exercise offers many heart benefits. So this is going to not only strengthen the muscles of the heart, it's going to improve your circulation. It's going to help you maintain a healthy body weight. It could also lower your pressure and help improve your cholesterol levels. So that is going to decrease your LDL, the bad cholesterol, and increase your good, the HDL cholesterol. If you're new to exercise, always check with your doctor before beginning any new exercise program. If you are a smoker, one of the best things you could do for your heart is quitting smoking. And if you are not a smoker, be sure to avoid secondhand smoke whenever possible. Smoking is the leading cause of preventable death, and on average, smokers die 10 years earlier than non-smokers. Sudden cardiac death also occurs 2 to 4 times more frequently in smokers than non-smokers, and heart attacks are far more common in smokers than non-smokers. So just to go back on into the why behind that, the nicotine constricts your blood vessels, and then the big one here is that carbon monoxide that we are inhaling. It damages that interior lining, that lumen of the arteries, making them more susceptible to having that plaque and that LDL cholesterol build up. Remember that cobblestone appearance of the arteries. That's going to cause that, and then the plaque forms right in there and causes that either occlusion or it could break off and become an embolus. When people stop smoking, their risk for heart disease drops rapidly. And after 10 years after quitting, their risk of death from cardiovascular disease is about the same as people who have never smoked. So again, if you are a smoker, the best thing that you can do for your heart is to quit smoking today. Another big one here, and this is a tough one for a lot of us to do, is to reduce stress. Unrelieved stress can damage your arteries. Stress can increase other existing risk factors, such as if you cause you to overeat and binge eat, could lead you to smoke, it could increase your pressure. We want to make sure that we're finding a way to reduce our stress as much as possible. So you could try to do things like physical activity, meditation, practice journaling, doing some self-care activities such as deep breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation, visual imagery. We could practice yoga, anything that will work for you that is a healthy outlet. I encourage you all to find ways, not just for your heart, but for your mental health. Find ways to reduce the stress in your life. It'll improve many conditions that you could have, not just lowering the risk for heart disease. So, big takeaway for this presentation. So we're going to manage those big 3 risk factors. We're going to manage our blood pressure. We are going to manage our blood sugar, and if we are a diabetic, and we are going to manage our bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol. We want to make sure that LDL cholesterol is nice and low, and we want to make sure the HDL, the good cholesterol, is nice and high. To do that, we're going to get our annual checkups. We're going to go to our wellness visits. If we are under the care of physicians or specialists, we're going to make sure we adhere to whatever they recommend to us very closely, and we're going to work with them very closely, make sure that we are following any medical advice they're giving us, taking medications that were prescribed to us. Again, reducing the risk for heart disease through managing blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol. And then we're going to incorporate healthy lifestyle changes. So we're going to eat a heart-healthy diet. We're going to engage in physical activity. We want to manage our stresses whenever possible. Remember, specific lifestyle changes have been proven to prevent the progression of heart disease. Again, it's largely preventable, and that's a good thing for us. There's a lot we can control. There's also some things that we cannot control. So make sure that we focus on what we can do to prevent the chances that we get heart disease. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to contact a wellness specialist so that way we get those answered for you. I'm going to end on this slide here. I'm just going to share with you that as a Geisinger member, there are some resources available for you. Those include the mail order pharmacy, Medicare Advantage, telenurse service 24/7. And then the bottom one here is the Share Your Success tracker. If you would like to share any success stories that you may have, please go to the link at the bottom there, or on your smart device, scan the QR code. It'll take you right to the page. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. Again, my name is Andrew, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.